Welcome to my webinar on workplace culture. I'm Kimberley Inniss-Peterson, and I am your human resource consultant. Let's ponder this quote for a moment by Richard Branson. Create the kind of workplace and company culture that will attract great talent. And as we discuss the webinar today, you will see just how important company culture is to attracting and retaining your workforce. Hello, I'm Kimberly. I protect businesses from unnecessary risks and costly mistakes through human resource and business consulting outsourcing solutions. What do I do exactly? I solve your business problems before they happen. I help you fill gaps and mitigate risks with issues stemming from managing employees. My services are professional, personalized for your needs, and protects you and your business from unnecessary risks and costly mistakes. Whether you are facing a current employee challenge, looking for advice before making a big decision, or simply need a policy audit to make sure your bases are covered, I can give you peace of mind that your business is moving in the right direction. My backstory: I became involved in human resources after a workplace injury many years ago. I found that I was very passionate about doing the right thing because I know it always leads to doing things right. And that's exactly what human resources is all about, is ensuring that workplaces adhere to employment legislation and that employees are being advocated for when it comes to their rights. I'm very passionate about empowering people and businesses to achieve their highest potential. As a human resource professional, I am regulated by Human Resource Professional Association, and I have a registration number. You can go to the HRPA website, pop in that registration number into the public register, and you can see my history as a professional. Through my registration with HRPA, I have to follow a very strict code of ethics and best practices based on evidence of effectiveness. Whenever I enter into a client relationship, I become what's known as a fiduciary, which essentially means that any information that is shared with me is kept confidential, and that I work in the best interest of my client and avoid any conflicts of interest. I do have to update my knowledge and skills on a regular basis through continuing professional education, as well as carry professional liability insurance. Other than being a wonderful human resource consultant, I'm also a wife and a mother. I'm an entrepreneur, and I coach and mentor junior human resource professionals in their career development. If you followed along in all of my webinars, we have come quite a ways. My first webinar was Introduction to Employment Law, followed by Workplace Policies, Employee Handbooks, Legally Defensible Human Resource Practices, and the Employee Life Cycle. Today, we will talk about workplace culture. If you've followed all 6 webinars, you will have developed a very comprehensive and robust understanding of human resources and a strategy for your business. Perhaps you've only joined me for 1 or 2 webinars. Either way, I'm glad that you've joined me, and I hope you get out of these webinars what you intended to. My approach to human resources is like a pyramid where you build a good, strong foundation based on the employment laws. Follow that with a good core strength in human resource operations, and where you develop policies, defensible practices, and employee handbooks. This webinar and the last webinar focused on more strategic human resources just to top off that pyramid in topics such as employee life cycle and workplace culture. If you attended all 6 webinars, you have made it to the end. Congratulations. Legal disclaimer: this is not legal advice. The information provided in this webinar does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. It is for information purposes only. The contents of my webinars are intended for small business owners in the province of Ontario that are non-unionized. Let's get going on workplace culture. What is workplace culture? Is your workplace toxic? Surprising ways toxicity shows up and what it costs your business and what you can do to promote a positive workplace culture. What is workplace culture? A company's culture defines the proper way to behave within your business. This culture consists of shared beliefs and values established by you as the leader, and they're communicated and reinforced through different methods. Ultimately, what you want to do is shape your employees' perceptions and behaviors and their understandings of what it's like to work for your business. Organizational culture sets the context for everything your company does. Because industries and situations vary significantly, there is no one-size-fits-all to culture. There is no template I can show you. A positive, strong culture is a common denominator among the most successful companies. Leaders in successful companies live their cultures every day and go out of their way to communicate their cultural identities to employees. They are clear about their values and how those values define their organizations and determine how the organizations run. Workplace culture can be positive or it can be negative. A negative culture is completely ineffective and can bring down the organization and its leadership. Disengaged employees, high turnover, poor customer relations, and lower profits are examples of how the wrong culture can negatively impact your bottom line. Are you this guy, or do you know anyone like him? Everyone has heard of a toxic workplace, I am sure. What are the symptoms of a toxic environment? How can you measure it? There are several ways that you can identify if your workplace is toxic, and you can measure the level of toxicity, believe it or not. If a workplace is toxic, you will see increased absenteeism amongst your employees, a decrease in morale, an increase in theft and damage. Your employees will be careless. There will be tensions amongst staff. And you will be engaged in more employee discipline. Negativity can stem from the organization itself, or it could come from one or two employees within the organization. If the employee, then you as the business owner will have to deal with whatever means necessary, and then repair any damage that person has done to the remaining staff and your customers. If it's a toxic workplace, then you as the business owner have some work to do if you want to improve the workplace and improve your image and brand, as we spoke about in the last webinar, as being a business worthy of doing business. However, eliminating workplace toxicity is not just a nice thing to do. It is also legally required of you as a business owner because you are responsible for the health and safety of your employees under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And you have a duty to prevent discrimination under the Ontario Human Rights Code. If you recall from our first webinar in Introduction to Employment Law, we discussed the importance of employers being compliant with all applicable laws. In Ontario, a toxic work environment, also known as a poisoned work environment, is illegal. That is true. Let me walk you through it. A work environment that is so mentally unhealthy that it can be said to be toxic can amount to a breach of an employee's health and safety rights and human rights and can possibly lead to a constructive dismissal. So yes, toxic work environments are therefore illegal. There is an implied term in employment relationship that the employer will provide a workplace that is free from harassment and bullying. That is your obligation under the Occupational Health and Safety Act as an employer. The Occupational Health and Safety Act requires employers to develop and maintain workplace harassment policies and programs, as well as a response mechanism to address harassment in the workplace. We discussed that in webinar 1. If an employer fails to protect its employees from harassment, the work environment may become intolerable, also known as poisoned or toxic. If that's the case, if your workplace has become poisoned or toxic, your employee has two options. They may claim constructive dismissal. If you recall what a constructive dismissal is, it's when the workplace or the job itself has changed so dramatically that the employee is forced to resign. If this is a constructive dismissal case, you as the employer may be taken to court and a cash settlement may be your only remedy. Or if your workplace is insured through WSIB, then your employee may file a claim with WSIB to receive income replacement, in which case your WSIB premiums that you pay every month will increase and you can expect a fine or at least an investigation from the Ministry of Labor. Where does toxicity in the workplace come from? How does it come into your business and how is it perpetuated? You must also think about how it affects your business, your employees, and your bottom line. Workplace culture is how people interact and treat each other at work. Influences that come from people may actually be positive or they can be toxic. Research shows there are 6 ways culture can be influenced in an organization. Of course, there are more than 6. However, these are the big ones. There are 3 people indicators, and there are 3 organization indicators. Unconscious bias is a big one. And as workforces become more multicultural and multi-generational, unintended learned stereotypes come into our workforce. To overcome unconscious bias, you have to be aware that you have it, but awareness alone will not decrease the effect of the bias. As a leader, it's really important that in order to mitigate the unconscious bias, especially when measuring performance, use your employees' skills and knowledge to ensure that jobs are being assigned based on skills, knowledge, abilities, and other attributes, rather than if you like someone or not. Social intelligence is the ability to recognize and negotiate the social dynamics of the workplace. Some employees have a lot of social intelligence, some may have very little. When employees experience lower levels of social intelligence from their colleagues, they also experience lower levels of trust and respect and are less likely to feel safe speaking up. And that is a problem in any business. Pre-existing mindsets are expectations and perceptions, and as the workforce diversifies, employee perspectives will diversify as well. Teaching healthy conflict resolution skills could make the difference between keeping and losing your top talent. You, as a business owner, would be wise to learn about healthy conflict resolution because often conflict will come your way to be resolved. Organizational indicators. You can have in-groups and out-groups. And just like in high school where there was popular kids and the athletic kids, the same thing forms in a workplace, especially if it's a big workplace. Groups can form around race, gender, political beliefs, or any other factor. What you need to be aware of is that people in the out-groups receive less trust and support from managers compared to members of in-groups. So you as the business owner must be aware of where those groups are and then figure out how you can effectively manage them and reduce any tensions among the different groups. Power dynamics are important in understanding the health of workplace culture. It's much easier for people higher up in the hierarchy to get away with disrespectful behavior just because of the authority that they have. Employees will tolerate disrespectful behaviors from managers that they would not normally accept from others. They don't want to jeopardize their jobs. As a person in power, it's up to you to be aware that you do have that power imbalance and that you will form relationships with that imbalance in mind. Norms and practices are the spoken and unspoken rules that govern what is and what is not appropriate workplace behavior. Deliberate positive norms are the strongest predictor of a healthy culture. Norms and practices are essentially a guide to the way we do things here. So if you're stuck on that sound bite, we've always done it that way. That is an indicator of your norm, your organizational norm. Hopefully, it's a good norm. If not, you have to work on recognizing it and then changing it. The cost to your business when workplace culture is negative is very high. Healthcare costs to companies where a negative or toxic culture can be 50% greater than in other organizations that have a positive culture. In Canada, approximately 500,000 employees miss work each week due to mental health concerns alone. 60 to 80% of workplace accidents are attributed to stress, and it's estimated that more than 80% of doctor visits are due to stress. Workplace stress has been linked to health problems ranging anywhere from metabolic syndrome to cardiovascular disease and even death. The stress of belonging to hierarchies itself is linked to disease. Can you believe that? There's one study in particular that actually showed through brain imaging research that someone's rank, the lower in rank in the hierarchy, the higher their chances of cardiovascular disease and death from heart attacks. There have been studies, actually large-scale studies, that showed a strong link between leadership behavior and heart disease in employees. Stress-producing bosses are literally bad for the heart. Engagement in work, which is associated with feeling valued, secured, supported, and respected, cannot be sustained for the long term in a negative culture. So even though you may be promoting your business and your culture as a positive place to work, employees do eventually catch on. Sometimes it takes a while for an employee to pick up on the negativity, and then disengagement sets in. And that disengagement is very costly. In studies by the Queen's School of Business show that disengaged workers had 37% higher absenteeism, 49% more accidents, and 60% more errors and defects. Research also shows that workplace stress leads to an increase of almost 50% in voluntary turnover. People go on the job market, decline promotions, or they resign. And the turnover costs associated with recruiting, training, lowered productivity, lost expertise, and so forth are significant. Well-being at work comes from one place, a positive culture. What can you do about it? What can you do about your culture? It turns out there's a lot of things you can do, and you probably do them naturally anyway. But if not, now is the time to take the effort to change, because action changes things. Creating a positive and healthy culture for your team rests on a few major principles and essential characteristics. Let's walk through them right now. Caring for, being interested in, and maintaining responsibility for colleagues as friends. Providing support for one another, including offering kindness and compassion when others are struggling. Avoid blaming. Avoid blaming people for mistakes, and when they do make mistakes, simply forgive them. Inspiring one another at work is incredibly important, especially with teamwork. Emphasizing the meaningfulness of the work that you do. Treating one another with respect, gratitude, and trust, and acting with integrity to build trust. As an employer, how can you live these principles? It's very easy. You can foster social connections. Positive social connections can reduce sick days. Employees feel less depression, they learn faster, and remember longer. They can tolerate pain and discomfort better. They have better mental acuity and perform better on the job. Show empathy. How many of you have had a boss you actively avoided because of the stress associated with them? I have. A recent brain imaging study found that when employees recalled a boss that had been unkind or unempathetic, they showed increased activation in areas of the brain associated with avoidance and negative emotion. You, as the employer, have a huge impact on how your employees feel. Leaders who demonstrate compassion towards employees foster individual and collective resilience, especially during challenging times. Go out of your way to help. When leaders act in such a way, employees are moved and they are inspired to become more loyal and committed themselves. As a consequence, they are more likely to go out of their way and be helpful and friendly to other employees. You're creating a self-reinforcing cycle. Encourage people to talk to you, especially about their problems. Employees will trust that you have their best interests at heart, and that will improve their performance. Employees who feel safe rather than fearful in a culture of safety leads to better learning and performance outcome. It also encourages the spirit of experimentation, which is so critical for innovation. Leaders who are committed to operating from a set of values based on interpersonal kindness sets the tone for the entire organization. Kindness and generosity are strong predictors of team and organizational effectiveness. In a positive workplace, employees tend to have lower heart rates and blood pressure, as well as stronger immune systems. It also leads to a positive workplace culture, which again boosts commitment, engagement, and performance. This is not rocket science. Happier employees make for not only a more congenial workplace, but for improved customer service. As a consequence, a happy and caring culture at work not only improves employee well-being and productivity, but also customer satisfaction and profits for you. Talk about being competitive. A positive workplace culture is more successful over time because it increases positive emotions and well-being. This in turn improves people's relationships with each other and amplifies their abilities and their creativity. And the benefits just go on and on and on. Culture is the character and personality of your workplace. It's what makes your business unique and competitive, and it's the sum of its values, traditions, beliefs, interactions, behaviors, and attitudes. It is imperative that you, as the business owner or leader, step back, evaluate, and define your workplace culture, both what it is now and what you want it to be in the future, and how all of these factors either contribute or take away from your desired culture. All these things that we spoke about. It can be very difficult to define, but you know what? There are so many assessment tools and surveys out there that can help you gauge your culture. Surveys and assessment tools can reveal gaps between the culture you want and the culture you have. Other things that you can do include observation, have meetings about it, have discussions and interviews, anything that can help you expose your workplace climate. The important part is to start somewhere and open a dialogue with your leadership team about it. If you have a human resource department, tap into them. Or you can work with me or another human resource consultant and we can take a deeper dive. Keep in mind that culture is always a work in progress. There is no beginning, there is a beginning, but there is no end. It is something that evolves over time as your business evolves. It can and will change, but make sure that your culture is an important part of your business strategy. As we've discussed already, it's simply too significant to ignore. That concludes our webinar on workplace culture. If you want more information or have questions about your workplace and your workplace culture, please feel free to contact me. I'm available through email or you can call me on my cell phone. Feel free to go to my website to learn more about me and my business. If you're interested in working with me, consultation packages are available upon request. Thank you for joining me, and that concludes our webinar series. Bye for now.